afternoon. Well, no, what am I saying? Early evening. And it's beautiful outside here at Citizens United. This is episode number 7 on a beautiful day. And my co-host, Chris Fortin, he's on assignment. So he'll be back hopefully next week. But I have co-hosting with me is the king of media here in Niagara County, Peter Green.
King of media,
Definitely.
Yeah. Sitting here with one of my dear neighbors, our special guest. I'll let you introduce him today. But yeah, it's great to be on the show with you, John.
Yep, and we have, I should say who else we have in the studio also.
Please.
Before I get to our guest. The Two Virgos are here. They have a podcast. Well, it's on the Two Virgos page
You
on
can bring it
Facebook.
up, Dustin.
And it's Jennifer, I hope I say the names right, Blythe Nichols and Beck Gesh. And I was on their show, and it was a lot of fun. They did a great job. It's a great show. They just talk, and they were talking about politics for the last couple nights and anything else. So I really enjoyed it. I think it's Tuesday at 6 o'clock. So enjoyed that. The Two
Wonderful.
Virgos.
Well, we could have them on as guests if you like sometime.
We're going to do that.
I think
Definitely.
so.
Yeah,
Tonight they
absolutely.
came out to check out the digs.
Yeah, and I'm glad they're here. But our special guest
Yes.
is Mr. Jeffrey Flach. Now, Mr. Jeffrey Flach is a he's a serviceman. He was in the Army in Iraq, in Afghanistan. So we have obviously thank him for that service and protecting us. And also, he owns the Gorge View, which is a beautiful building. And I'm sure everyone's seen it on Whirlpool Street, right across from the aquarium. And nice to have you here, Jeffrey. Jeff?
Oh, nice to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here.
I'll bring that right up there.
You're the expert.
You got it. Now you are the speaker.
Jeff, I got to ask you something first before we move on to our topic. I was looking at your bio, and you've lived in a ton of places. And you lived in West Africa, I think. Mali?
Yeah, you're going to bring up the coup that just
Yeah,
happened
I couldn't
yesterday?
believe. Yeah, unbelievable, right?
It was unbelievable, to be honest. So 3 coups ago, that president, I met with face-to-face while I was there. I worked with his senior staff. And then a little over a year later, while I was in Afghanistan, he was near his end of his last term. And there was a random coup very much like the one that happened yesterday. And I was literally telling that story to a guest yesterday, not knowing that there was a coup going into Mali unfolding almost exactly the same. So weird, strange little quirk of coincidence.
Now, are the dangers of that Al-Qaeda or stuff like that?
No,
or?
so, I mean, there's a lot going on in regions like, and that's why I was on the topic with it was a Chinese guest, and we were just talking stability around the globe. And, I was talking about Africa and, South America was that way when I was a kid. You could wake up tomorrow and you can have a whole new government in some South American country. And Africa's still very much that way. And I used the previous coup in Mali as an example, not knowing there was literally one happening as we were talking. But, yes, you do have Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and that's the main reason I was in Mali at that time was a counterterrorism mission. And working with their government to prevent that from creating instability, but you still have different political factions and different ideas. So here in America, where we have Republicans and Democrats, almost feels like we're in a civil war era at the moment. Over there, those arguments actually lead to change the country. That's what happened yesterday. It was really a junior officer in the military who's from a prominent family got some tension with some senior officers and felt like, he's going to get punished unfairly, and he's right. And he got some of his soldiers together, went to the Army, secured some weapons, arrested the senior officers, and then went up the hill and started arresting senior cabinet members.
Yeah.
And now he's in charge.
Yeah, unbelievable.
That easy.
Unbelievable. I had to ask you because I was looking today and I saw that you were in the capital of Mali, and I was reading the story, and just unbelievable. I can't even imagine what that's got to be like. He took the president by gunpoint.
Yep.
And then the president came on TV or whatever, and I guess he kind of said he resigned.
Yeah, and they've all been all 3 coups have been relatively peaceful. While I was in Mali, the 4th so the guy who was overthrown in the 90s, he'd been under house arrest in a nice mansion on the Niger River, and we had another special ops team who had a mansion right next door overlooking, so we could wave at the previous president from our terrace. Well, not my terrace. I had a different house, but from their house.
Right.
It's a weird place.
That's got to be. You've been everywhere. I got other questions later, but here we go. Our phone number here is 716-804-1229. Also interact on Facebook. We'll be checking that, of course, any questions. But why Jeff is here is short-term rentals here in Niagara Falls. And tonight there is a planning board meeting happening right now as we speak. And I think that's where Chris is on assignment at Fortin. And I asked him, let me know if anything happens or something we should know. But, Jeff, I know that the new mayor has put well, he's doing what every other city has done, right? I mean, basically.
Yeah, he's really moving towards what is a global consensus on how you deal with vacation rentals in a modern age.
Yeah, because it hasn't been dealt with. I was looking around today before the show, like at just everywhere, Myrtle Beach, wherever, at all different places, Virginia Beach, and everyone has something happen, something. Right. I think they all, now you would know, Jeff, and maybe Peter, do they all have zones, all these places, or no?
I can't say if 100%. Right. Most of so Niagara Falls is a destination city, and let me really define what I mean by that. A destination city is its economy exists and is primarily driven by the fact that it's a tourist destination. New York City is certainly a destination tourists go to, but their economy is not driven by tourism. D.C. is a destination many people go to, but their economy is not driven by that. Whereas Niagara Falls, Myrtle Beach, Panama City, Florida, Branson, Missouri, your areas outside major national parks, they're a destination city. Now, most of those Niagara Falls is unique because we weren't always a destination city, even though we always had destination. We were an industrial city. So our economy was driven by that, and we didn't really think about our tourism. We didn't really develop it over decades the way these other destination cities had. So like going to Myrtle Beach, they actually weren't that negatively impacted, or you didn't create tension and disturbance in their zoning ordinance when Airbnb came to be, because they already had it zoned and they already had it figured out, because they already had a healthy, developed vacation rental segment in their accommodation selection.
Right. Yeah, no, I was reading about them, and something's right now, as a matter of fact. I think they're kind of having a similar issue currently, and it has to do with with neighborhoods and people being upset with spring breakers and all that stuff. So it seems kind of similar.
You still get your outline. So, you might have a good ordinance in place, but because it's so easy for me to advertise any property to the entire global tourism market, if I'm outside the zone, well, I might just go advertise my property, even though it's against the style of zoning. And you're always going to have that. It's just like, we have speed limits, but people don't go faster. We have laws against murder, but people do it.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's think about and let the people. Jeff, you can do this. What is the new mayor's ordinances, or what is his plan?
All right. So, can I back and give a little bit of history of?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So
Absolutely.
If we go, when I got back retired from my military and came back to town in 2014, Niagara Falls had no ordinance at all to address this. There was no legal path to have a vacation rental in the city of Niagara Falls. And obviously, Airbnb was blowing up, and a lot of these other online platforms were creating the opportunity, so people were starting to do it, but they were doing it outside of any legal structure. I don't like to say they were doing it illegally. Just there was no law at all.
Right.
It was because there was no. So vacation rental is a use, right? Residential is a use. Making a gas station is a use. Because nowhere in our zoning ordinances permit this use, it was technically against the zoning ordinance. All right, so the city can say stop, cease, desist. That's illegal because it wasn't a permitted use there. Then they created a new ordinance, I forget which year, I want to say maybe 2016, 2017, that said, okay, you can do it by special use permit. Now, a special use permit is usually an added control, right? So I'll give you bed and breakfast, for example, have always been zoned. There are areas in the city you can do bed and breakfast. You don't need anything but to obey the other codes that regard it, but you don't need special permission to use that property for bed and breakfast. There are areas in the city that you cannot use a residential property for bed and breakfast, not at all. No way. You'd have to ask for exception to zoning, which is very high standard. And then there's areas of the city where you can do it, but you need a special use permit. Special use permits kind of add an added control, right? Here maybe, and for bed and breakfast, it's kind of obvious the thinking was, here's a neighborhood with a little bit more integrity. We don't really want to proliferate too much, but it's close to the zone, so people want to do it. But we don't want to turn it into a tourist neighborhood, right? The residents there are happy, so we don't want to disturb them. So we're going to make sure people achieve a slightly higher standard and do extra special things with that B&B in that particular neighborhood by way of a special use permit, that if they don't do it, we can pull later. Vacation rental with the current ordinance said you can do it anywhere you want in the city with a special use permit, and the planning board, zoning board of appeals understanding has been they can't deny a special use permit, and that's true so long as you meet the standard. But what they've been doing is they've been like handing them out like candy. Before you've even met the standard, you go before and ask for it, and that makes sense from an investor standpoint. Do I really want to go through the effort if I'm not going to get my permit? Now that you gave me the permit,
Right.
why do I want to go through the effort? I'm now legal. So that's created a lot of hodgepodge stuff. But additionally, because of the lack of zoning, it's hard to enforce. So if I pull up a map in code enforcement and see all these little things, they're all over the city. And now it's going to take me hours to sort it out, like which one got a permit, which one didn't. Your enforcement becomes a lot more efficient when if the dot's not in this area, it's probably illegal. So there's going to be a few that are grandfathered. So I just cross-reference those few, and then I realized these ones are all definitely outside the law, so let's go hit those first and protect the residential tag of that neighborhood.
Jeff, just as a introduction to our program, over here on your right, you can see, and folks, this is the Facebook comments. The lowest comment there came from, not the lowest on value, but just at the bottom, came from Sean Levick, who said, it came about because of how Grandietti, who is Kristen Grandietti, a former counselor, was operating hers. Does that have any relevance to what you're saying? Or?
Well, kind of, sort of. So, yeah, back when she was a councilwoman, and that's what... So, granted, she was running really the right sort of Airbnb, where she was operating more as a bed and breakfast. She was operating in an area that she could legally do it. She just hadn't gone through the process to become a bed and breakfast. So she wasn't operating vacation rental. She was owner-occupied. She's renting out a single room in her house. And there's a lot of cities across the nation that if you're going to rent out one extra bedroom, okay. One, you're there to control this guest and monitor them and make sure everything's okay. And it's giving you, the owner, a certain amount of right to get access to extra capital with some extra space. So that's that lowest level of operation. You're not really impacting your neighborhood, but there are rules that we had in place that she wasn't, doing. As a B&B in town, you're supposed to be collecting occupancy tax. She hadn't done that until it came out in the newspaper. It was also interesting because back when Mayor Dicer was running for his last reelection on the Vince Anello show, I asked Vince to ask him if he was willing to relook the ordinance. And Vince asked him, and I'll never forget his response. It was a right and wrong response. His initial reaction was, no, I would never do it, which I think is wrong. We should have vacation rentals. It's just totally necessary. You can't be a Class A destination without this segment of accommodation. But his reasoning was absolutely sound because it erodes residential integrity, right? It'll lower the quality of life for residents and create friction between that commercial use and normal residential use. But there are ways to mitigate that risk with your zoning, which is brings us to the current proposal by the current mayor is he's finally going back and doing that. When they passed last ordinance, I was against that ordinance because it didn't zone. I'm for this ordinance because it does zone. There's a lot of nuanced differences. There's things you could do to enhance enforcement within the ordinance. There's ways you can do it outside the ordinance too. There's efficiencies built into this ordinance, I believe, that improve enforcement. You can discuss where the border is and whether that's the perfect border or not. It's certainly not the wrong borders. But, yeah, you can have those debates. But overall, this proposal is leaps and bounds above where we are and bringing us to where other Class A destination towns have been for a long time.
Well, now I know I'm going to try to do this, but you guys can help me. It starts at like Buffalo Avenue down near right down near where like the Goat Island.
Yeah,
and then keeps going toward. I know it ends up kind of where I'm on Finley Drive.
Right.
But go ahead if you got a better way of describing it.
Yeah, I do. So I like to start at the north end. So between Finley and Main Street, between Whirlpool and Main Street, from Finley all the way down to the Upper River, right? So that strip all the way down. And then from basically Pine Avenue, or maybe it's Walnut, I'm not sure, it starts to head west, all right, and encompasses basically the 100, 200, 300, 400, and maybe also, and I think the 500 block. What block are we sitting on now? This is 500 block?
Oh.
Yeah, we're on the 500. So the 500 block all the way up to High Park Boulevard, I believe. It might be Portage or it's High Park. I forget which.
We're right at 10th. That's what I know.
Right, but I mean...
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if... Yeah. But right on Pine's usually 600,
well, yeah,
right?
so this address is Pine.
Yes.
So, but yeah, this is going north to south, this is a 500 block.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But no, this might be a 600 block.
I was thinking 6.
Yeah, this is a 600 block. Right. I literally lived 2 blocks from here as a child, so I should know, and that was 440. So we're on the 600 block. So it certainly encompasses the 500 blocks, going all the way up to actually Memorial Parkway, 13th Street.
Right.
So it's Portage. And then there's a cutout that goes east of that's much closer to the river. And that's something I've heard different people question, why did we add this little piece? I don't know. I don't really care. Ultimately, we do not know how many we need. The market will decide that over time. Mm-hmm. If this gets the concentration that I hope this achieves, you'll see it stall out. No one's doing it anymore, and there's more houses left, so we obviously had a large enough zone. If all the properties bought up and it bids up the remaining properties and no one wants to sell and people still need vacation rentals and they're saying no to people in summer, then maybe you need to add to the zone. Right. But that's something that plays out over time. So in a way, I accept the arbitrariness of the current lines. You want it in proximity to the attraction, and you want it in proximity to commercial corridors. And so that you're doing that. You're giving Niagara Street now let's pretend all of those houses become a vacation rental one day.
Right.
All of those guests now walk down to Niagara Street and down, and all of those empty abandoned buildings become viable commercial storefronts. Or they come down Ferry and Walnut and up 3rd, and then all that unused commercial real estate on 3rd now becomes commercially viable. So in the long run, that's why zoning doesn't just decrease the friction with residential integrity. It creates a better market for the neighboring commercial corridors that does 2 things. Not only does it enhance the business in that area and the viability of that commercial property, but it also provides the tourist a better experience. Imagine right now if we just sprinkle them all over the city. Which 7-Eleven is which guest going to? They're going to some random 7-Eleven that's very close. That 7-Eleven might just specialize in things I need, like incense and Swisher Sweets. And lottery tickets. And now you have a tourist, a soccer mom, and a couple of kids standing in line waiting for that to happen, and they forgot their phone charger, and they don't have one there.
Right.
And that's a bad experience.
Right.
Versus when you've got them all concentrated, they're going to the same couple of stores who aren't selling Swisher Sweets and incense, but they're selling the phone chargers and bags of ice and the other little things tourists typically need. And it's a better experience for them.
Right. Now, and I don't know about you, Peter, but I have a real open mind on this whole thing. Now, I'm in the zone, so our house is in the zone, so I got it's something that's important to me. But I've tried to have an open mind with the whole thing. I've listened to a lot of people. I've had some people send me messages about how this is a bad, and then I was listening to them how this was bad, and I was kind of okay. I get a little bit of what they're saying, Why can't we have a spot in LaSalle? Why can't we, maybe a 10 blocks of, I don't know. Someone was telling me between like 75 from 74th Street to 56th Street and things like that. But I don't know. I mean, the only thing that I look at, and then we could talk about this too, is what about the use of Airbnb? I got that too. I was getting some questions about that. Why do they have to go to that platform, and when there's others?
That's a very interesting question. That's one thing in the ordinance I can't explain. I don't understand.
Right.
The only rationale I can see for it is Airbnb is the one platform that has started working with municipalities to collect the local taxes. And the county's entered an agreement with them to do that for the county. So if you force your people to do that with the city, well, now this platform's collecting taxes and there's a little more efficient, and I feel like we're going to be getting our public revenue. That's a bit of a short-sighted way of doing that, though, because just because you force me on that platform, you can't prohibit me from using the other platforms. And all of my bookings might be coming through VRBO, and therefore I have to file my own taxes, and you're still at that same risk of me lying about my taxes and not getting the full revenue. It might also be that it creates a ease. Part of the logic, again, I don't know the mayor's reasoning on every single piece. I just know how I feel about what I see. One other thing I see as a value to that is ease in enforcement. If everyone is on this platform, right, I can just print that platform, cross-reference my list, and now it's good. And then you're going to be using the same pictures on all your microsites across all the different platforms. And that's one of the things that's hard, is like people don't put the address to this house. So I know this doesn't seem to be one of the legal rentals, but I'm not sure exactly where it is. And it's a lot of investigation and tomfoolery to figure out which house is this. Now that I've looked on here, now I look at the same pictures on VRBO, and I'm seeing this property is on Airbnb. Therefore, it's probably not legal, and I can focus on it. But I don't think those little minor efficiencies in enforcement justify the picking a winner and loser between platforms, because you are kind of picking a winner. Airbnb gets access to 100% of our market, and the other's got to fight. Right. You know, that's a little anti-competition, anti-market in my view, but it's not enough to make me say, vote this down. I would have no problem if one of the councilmen said, I would like to amend this and strike it out and be happy to prove it. That won't bother me either. You know. Right.
Well, and I got another question for you, because I don't know much about it. It had to do with you were talking about enforcement. Who does who is it that's doing the enforcement? Who is it? Do they have a special department, or what is it?
So usually all businesses have various bodies of law that govern what they do, and it's the authority for that body of law that enforces the aspect. So in this aspect, we're talking about zoning, right, and code. So there's two different bodies of law, but the same department here in the city enforces both zoning ordinance and building code, and that's code enforcement. So code enforcement will have the responsibility, like the police department gives you tickets for parking. They're going to be giving you the cease and desist orders and the penalties for violating the zoning ordinance. Code, usually you got to go through the process, then come and inspect you and give you a certificate of compliance that says, yes, your property now meets the standard for this usage, and you're pretty much good forever. They'll periodically, every 5 years or this ordinance that looks like they want to do every 1 year for these. It's basically every 5, hotels, every 5 years they come and make sure you didn't knock down walls, add circuits, all that building code, safety stuff.
Oh, all right.
But health side, the health department comes in and inspects me and health. My boiler gets inspected by 2 different government agencies, plus my insurance. So there's a lot of different things that inspect a lot of different things. But in this case, we're talking about code enforcement.
Right. All right. And the next thing, and this has been something that I've got from a couple of Facebook people today. What do you think? I'm going to ask you, Jeff, because I know you can't speak for the mayor, but you're just speaking for yourself, and I know you know what's happening. Sending visitors into the worst neighborhoods. That's something that was said to me. Why would we want to do that? How are we going to protect them? And why, what do you think of that? I'm sure you've heard that argument.
Right. So define the worst neighborhood.
Okay.
Right. So
Right.
we have some bad neighborhoods. We have some good neighborhoods. We have some neighborhoods in between. So a lot of people view this zone as a bad neighborhood, and it's certainly not our healthiest neighborhood. When it comes to if you plot violent crime in Niagara Falls, violent crime doesn't happen in this zone. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but overall it's outside the zone. 19th and Ferry, 19th and Walnut, Center City. Now it's
Hello.
Oh, hold on. I got a caller. I'm sorry.
Wow.
That's great.
Citizens United, you're on the air.
Hey, I just wanted to let you know, I just came from the city council meeting, and luckily it was voted down. Woo!
Oh.
And all the audience broke out into laughter. We're so happy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And that was the planning board, right?
right, not city council.
They took it off. They're voting against it.
Oh.
The planning board's
Yep.
recommending disapproval.
Right. So it's not going to go through. Come on.
Well, thank you for the call. Thank you
Yeah,
for letting
you're
us
welcome.
know.
I just had a couple questions
Sure.
for Jeff. I was
Yep.
curious. How do you feel about having to only be able to advertise on the Airbnb website?
We just went over that like 5 minutes ago. I
Well, I
think
didn't
that's a
listen to it because I
strange
was in the
thing.
meeting, so
It
I
doesn't
would
re-
ask you to tell me again, please.
Sure. So the ordinance doesn't restrict you to only Airbnb. It forces you to be on Airbnb. You could still be on other booking platforms. So I don't know what the rationale for that is. I don't think that's a valuable thing and shouldn't be in that particular aspect. I don't think should be in the ordinance. But it's not something that makes me say this is horrible.
I think the ordinance sucked, to be quite honest. We have, my husband and I manage 28 Airbnbs. 24 happen to be right in Niagara Falls. And some are definitely in the district that they are trying to limit it to. Many, of course, are out, and of course will be grandfathered. But I think it's very narrow-sighted to like make the tourists basically the worst part of the city. You're going to limit that to where the Airbnbs can be. And to use your rationale, because I watched you on Vincenello and how rude you were to the callers and like talking over them, not acceptable. But for you to say that more tourists staying downtown are going to like make more restaurants and more businesses profitable. Everybody lives in Niagara Falls, right? Not just the city, not just close to the falls. Some live in LaSalle, some live in DeVoe, some live everywhere. Why shouldn't those businesses benefit from tourists? You act as though the only way these downtown businesses can, do well is if the tourists stay down here, and that's not correct. They come down here regardless. And as you know, most people in Airbnbs, the reason they stay in Airbnb is because they've got a family and they like to cook, and they don't usually go out to a lot of restaurants, to be quite honest. So I just feel like you have a hostel, which is a little different format. Of course, you live there and you've rent out single rooms, etc. But like when you were on Vincenello and you were comparing that a short-term rental I realize zoning is zoning, but you compared it to like strip clubs and restaurants and a hair salon. That's crazy. You've got 6 or 8 people maybe coming into an Airbnb for the weekend or for a few days.
I don't want to be rude to you too,
foot
but I think we got
all day
your
in and
point.
out of like a normal business.
So can I respond
So
to
I think
those?
it's very. I'm not done speaking, and then you can respond. I just think it's very narrow-minded and short-sighted of you. Go ahead. You can respond now.
Okay. So let's separate the personal attack from the actual logical arguments that she presented.
I don't think I was anything personal. I don't even know who you are. But go on.
You don't know who I am, but you know where I live, where I have a hostel.
I know of you because you were on Vincenello, and I couldn't believe how rude you were. But that's how I know of you. Well, and I know, and then I looked you up. I looked up your gorge view and your one hostel. So yeah.
Wonderful.
But that's all I know about you. I have nothing personal against you. I just think that you were kind of rude. That's all.
Right, because one caller wanted to filibuster the show. So let's go and address these points one by one. Let's start with zoning. I think it's a good time to illustrate a very important concept people are missing.
I get to play technical,
which is economic inertia. So, what people don't realize is, did a lot of stuff before I came back 7 years ago. And part of it was analyzing complex socioeconomic problems and developing solutions. So I know a lot more about macroeconomics and markets. So in economics, you have inertia, just like you do in physics. If, let's say, this whole vacation rental thing is going to bring in $6 million of investment over the next 2 years, all right? If we were to take that and break it into 3 different neighborhoods with 1 million being pumped in 2 different times over the course of those years into 3 different neighborhoods, I'd tap my 3 dominoes and I would barely move the economy, right? But if I take all $6 million and do it all at once into one zone, I actually move the whole economy way further. It takes more capital to get an economy into motion than to keep it in motion. And it still works with this. If you concentrate that investment into one zone, all the property value in there will go up, and property value in the rest of the city will start to go up. You will displace more people into more long-term residents into the other neighborhoods.
I agree. I understand what you're saying. However,
so now let's go look at the opposite side first, please.
A roadmap, quite a long ways to go to get there. And I see what you're
agree.
saying.
It would
However,
take quite a bit.
Why do you think
so? Now
like,
let's go back.
The worst part of the city.
Well,
the absolute
we'll get there. You've asked me a question. I'll answer. Please let me finish now.
Hold on. Just let me ask you something real quick. I don't need all your explanations. Let me ask you a question.
All right.
Okay, so if they were to limit it to downtown, do you agree that, like, all of those boarded up, abandoned properties that are by Niagara Falls redevelopment, like, that would be prime Airbnb area? I think it would be. I'm just trying to say what type of housing is available in that area? Like, what are they going to do with that housing?
All right. First of all, who's they? All right. So what I'm talking about is attracting.
They being you're going to limit people to buy homes and turn them into Airbnbs if you want to, in a like a small area that's like the worst part of the city.
It's not that small. It's about
honestly.
10,000 houses.
Okay.
There's 10,000. Well, maybe not 10. Certainly 4,000 lots that we're talking about. All right.
Okay.
The
That's
city
more like it,
currently
10,
owns 200.
Mm-hmm.
The city owns 250 lots within that zone.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That need to be put on the private market.
That would be great for the city.
Right.
I agree.
So you're right. That's an ugly area. We have a lot of ugly areas, and we're not going to get any. So let's set this proposal aside, and let's go down the path of no zoning and what we would see happen then. You're going to see, and that's the current trend. The current trend is what I call cherry picking. Someone comes in and says, I would like to do this. I've got 60 grand, and Houses in Niagara Falls buys me a lot of house. Here's a house for 60 grand. It'd be a great long-term rental. It's in a neighborhood that has decent integrity or good integrity. It's got maybe one abandoned house and one derelict house and a porch falling down. But this house looks good. For $60,000, I can pretty much flip that into a vacation rental with a month's worth of paint, and I'm in business. Great. Now, have I raised the value of anything doing that? I paid the market price. It becomes a comp for a certain amount of time with other things. Maybe they value it slightly higher, but you're going to dollar cost average the price per square foot in that area, and you're going to lose it. Now, if you go and do that in one area times 20, now what you have is you've had 20 houses that are all the comps, and it's raised all the value of that. All the houses that didn't get any work done, their value goes up. And then the next person who wants to invest has to pay a slightly higher market price plus do the renovation. Now, you're right. You look at some of those houses like, man, I would never live there. But I'll give you an example. Right on 3rd Street, if you drive south past my place and past the aquarium parking lot, on the right side, you're going to see 3 houses. If we go back 4 years, or if you look right across the street at the 3 meta houses, you'll see what those 3 houses looked like a few years ago. Those 3 houses are currently now 100% renovated. It costs, I don't know, they'd probably be in, wouldn't want me to put out the numbers, but this very significant investment was put into those 3 homes to transform those from 3 derelict zombie places to 3 very nice houses. And what you see in other cities, destination cities, is you see that's how they rejuvenate neighborhoods too, if they're on the wrong side. Most cities never really had that problem. Some have done it that way. Niagara Falls is primed to rejuvenate entire neighborhoods this way by focusing that investment.
There's enough derelict properties around this city,
absolutely,
in the zone and outside the proposed zone. And
we cannot
most of the Airbnbs that we have all been foreclosed, abandoned shithole houses that we have fixed up. And so I'm just saying, as a citizen, I would much rather, and they're all legal, they're all permitted, so I agree there should be enforcement. I agree that there should be, permits, there should be inspections. Absolutely, because there's a lot of illegal Airbnbs around, or a lot of illegal short-term rentals, and who knows if they're safe. We have to jump through hoops, have the city inspect us, have everything hardwired alarms, everything. You know how it is. You do it. So for us, for the 28 properties that used to be abandoned crap holes, most of them, I'd say that our neighbors are pretty happy that they have an Airbnb next door rather than a dilapidated, foreclosed, abandoned home.
Now let me jump on that one.
Caller.
Obviously.
Thank you, caller. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your call.
Obviously, anyone would want to live next to a good vacation rental than a bad slumlord. Absolutely. But that's today. What if I have a nice family next door? When you put the vacation rental there, you're never going to get the family next door again. And it's impossible to be perfect as an owner controlling your guest behavior. All right. It's impossible for me in the house of living there, but obviously it's easier because I'm present and I can hear services and nip it in the bud. But I've had to tell guests to get out. And in a couple of cases, I've had to say, oh, you don't want to leave? 911, can you send an officer to escort this person off my property? The vacation rentals bad at all. That's what we talk about, the threat to residential integrity. Yeah, this owner's good. Maybe he lives within a block or two. He monitors guests, screens them better. But he's going to have the group that at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday is outside. They've got a little too drunk. They're being noisy, and they're disturbing the neighbors. You're going to get the family that said, oh, we're just coming for a quiet little vacation. But no, what they meant was it's a big bachelorette party or bachelor party, and it's 400 people, right? And
where's this happening again?
Well, it's already happened. It's hit the Buffalo News in Niagara Falls twice this year alone. So you can't say, oh, it doesn't happen.
No, we know it does. Absolutely.
So that's that threat to residential integrity. Now, when you impact, you still have an impact on neighbors when you have it clustered, but they're tourist neighbors, right? They're going to get over it. One, they didn't have to get up in the morning, or if they did, they had to get up in the morning to catch the plane. So they're not as disturbed. They might just kind of join in. It's far less friction. At the end of the day, this is a commercial use of property. Point blank, it is a commercial use of property. Yes, you're using a residential structure. Now, she referred back to when I was talking about bars and stuff. Exactly. I can equate this to any other use because it's a use. If you can say this use is permissible anywhere in the city, why can't any other use be permissible anywhere in the city? I can turn a house into a doctor's office. Why can't I just start putting a doctor's office in any house and in any block I want to? I can turn it into a restaurant. Why can't I just go open restaurants in any house in any neighborhood anywhere in the city? That's what I mean. I'm flabbergasted by this failure to understand this one basic principle of why we even define uses and zone uses. It's actually to protect property rights. People attack me because I'm a conservative and normally I'm for property rights. You should be able to use your property anywhere you want. Well, no, not when it intrudes on the rights of the neighboring property owner, right?
Well, I remember Sir Francis Bacon, his great line, my right to extend my arm goes as far as my neighbor's nose.
Right. Or sometimes my neighbor's lawn.
Right.
But sound travels over the fence.
Yeah.
Like I think you should let me build my garage pretty much anywhere on my property you want to. I get a little bit disturbed by easements and things like that. It's on my property. Or if I want to build a garage that looks funny, you shouldn't be able to tell me, oh, it looks funny, we don't want you to build it.
Right.
You've done a lot with that facility. Sorry,
real
John.
quick.
Hey, go ahead. You're on the line.
Citizens United.
Hey, real quick, Chris Borton. Sorry I missed the shenanigans tonight. I love that place. Chihuahua Media, number one media.
Your seat's cold.
You're on assignment. That's where you are.
I'm on assignment.
Yeah, you're on assignment.
Hey, real quick. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do want to say, Jeffrey, you comparing strip clubs and restaurants in this a special use permit in a neighborhood, you're comparing that to an Airbnb because it's a special use business permit?
No, it's a commercial use. I'm comparing commercial uses, commercial uses.
Okay, well, you have to get a special permit to open up an Airbnb.
Yeah, and?
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Does that mean we shouldn't have it zoned?
You get a special permit for an Airbnb. Yeah. Your argument.
You got to get special permits for strip bars.
Your argument is weak. No one's going to open up a strip club or a restaurant in a neighborhood. And
really?
Actually,
we just closed one down 2 years ago on Ferry Avenue. Well, 2 years ago, they closed the strip club on Ferry Avenue.
I'm talking.
All right. Me too.
Yeah, why don't you shut up?
I love it. I'm always the rude one when people talk.
Why don't you shut up? Because your mouth is annoying me.
All right. Say what you got to say.
So be quiet for a minute and let me talk. Why don't you compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, you jackass?
Commercial use to commercial use.
Nope, you're wrong.
Okay, I'm wrong.
Dude, a strip club is not going to go in a fucking neighborhood.
We just closed one in a neighborhood 2 years ago.
Can I interrupt this for a second, Chris?
Sure.
I'm going to draw
your out of your mind.
No,
Chris,
it's in the newspaper.
Chris, calm down just a second, okay? I appreciate your passion. I don't know if any of you saw this. Somewhere late last year, the Buffalo Chronicle, a newspaper that is a piece of crap. It is only online. The Canadian government want to sue them. The Buffalo Chronicle ran an article, if you look it up, that the idea of having a tourism innovation in the north end of Buffalo, like north end of Niagara Falls, pardon me, in the Main Street District, was to introduce male strip clubs and escort clubs. Read the article. And now there was no foundation to it. This piece of crap doesn't have any sources. They just say someone close to the mayor said. But when you read it, there are people who still want to have that type of entertainment here. How many people say they go across the border to go to the Canadian Ballet? And
but
so
it'd probably be in a business district, right? 3rd Street, Main Street, somewhere.
It's right next door to tourist hotels on Lundy's Lane. I used to work near it. But in fairness...
No, I agree, but I'm saying a strip club would be in a business district, not in a residential neighborhood.
Well,
so
it was illegal, but we had a strip club right here in a residential neighborhood in Niagara Falls.
All right, have a good day.
I think in fairness, John, and I'm sorry to kind of take over that one.
No,
but,
go ahead. No problem.
But free speech to me is so important to listen to each other because you'll hear things you miss trying to come up with something to say. But the point is that article appeared and it gave some legitimacy that people questioned to say, we're going to have strip clubs here. Women are going to come from Canada to be entertained in a certain way. And it just the thought of it had people actually thinking it could work.
That was Richie Arzi.
Matt Ricciardi. Yeah, and worst journalist. Well, not a journalist, just a tabloid fish wrapper.
Right. Go ahead.
Again, there are many different ways you can use a property. This is a commercial use, right? You can get upset that I said strip clubs, but I love using that example because people are like, it's preposterous. But again, the Niagara Falls Police Department did a raid on a strip club that had been operating for months not a few blocks from where we're sitting in a residential neighborhood. So obviously totally illegal, but they were using residential property for a strip club. You can use it for a restaurant. You can use it for a lot of different things. Just because you don't conceive of it or you don't want to do it doesn't mean one property owner might not wake up one morning after he retires from the fire department saying, I've always wanted to be a restaurant owner, and I have a whole lot of house, so I'm making it a restaurant. And why can't he? If it's okay to use it for this one commercial use, why isn't it okay for this other one? And the fact that you're using a special use permit as your thing doesn't change the friction you're creating by not zoning it.
And I think you're right that any commercial use can lead to other commercial use. Right. And commercial use is a broad term.
Right. How do you deny me a special use permit for this other commercial use if I take you to court when you set this precedent of allowing the other commercial use? It's consistency. It's how other people handle it. And it's amazing to me how hard it is for people to understand what are really basics in urban planning.
Well, let's fire over to. We've had some great comments here, John. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm good.
Well, some from Chris, Kevin Hutchinson. Thank you, everyone, for all the comments. But Tony Petoskey, Jeff, do you know that you are Jeff, you know you're exaggerating the facts. STR do not need to be zoned at this point. Short-term rentals, of course. The core zone right now is not a marketable area at this time.
I love that because, to me, his statement disproves his premise. All right, you're looking at this time. I'm talking about 10, 20, 30 years and full development of your city and its economy. If you focus it, it will be developed sooner rather than later. If you allow it to go over the city, you're not going to improve the core. You continue to embarrass yourselves when those tourists who are staying in LaSalle come into the core and say, oh, my God, look at all the areas surrounding the tourist district, versus focusing your investment there, raising that up so all tourists see a good impression of our city. They're not interfering with our residents. And again, you'll start to see greater revenue. One, just the public revenue side. I mean, I hate to go off on tangents and explain a lot of other background principles of markets. But if Niagara Falls, I watch the market very closely. I understand market forces everywhere. Your properties downtown book up faster at higher prices than your properties uptown because that's where people meet. Sure, there are people that's not that important. They're willing to stay outside. But that's the bottom line. If you have it concentrated in proximity to the real attraction, even people who are just coming to town to watch their kid play at NU isn't going to mind staying in a vacation rental that's quality 4 miles from NU versus 4 miles from NU in LaSalle, right? They don't care that they're downtown or LaSalle, but they don't care. Right. So this argument, not everyone comes from Niagara Falls, is a true argument, but not one that changes their overall market. Going back to...
I'm sorry, excuse me for 1 second. We have a caller. Caller, you're on live with Citizens United. Hello, caller.
Are we on?
Yep, you're on.
Beautiful. I have a question for you. I think I heard some information regarding how many nights are lost to the city of Niagara Falls by people staying in places like Rochester, Buffalo, Batavia, maybe even as far as Jamestown.
Right.
Any estimate on how many nights we lose per year? Give me a rough ballpark.
So it could be as many as 2 million.
2 million nights we're talking about. We're talking about a calendar evening, correct?
Right.
Okay. What's the low side of that?
The low side would be somewhere around 10,000.
10,000.
I doubt it's that low. I'm sure it's got to be somewhere in the hundreds of thousands.
Okay. Well, how about if we go with 50,000?
Yeah, I'd say there's a very low estimate.
For sake of argument, that would be on the low side.
Right.
When somebody comes into town, now I know when I go out and I'm vacationing somewhere, when I wake up, I want to eat right away. Right. I don't want to drive 3 miles or 10 miles and then eat. I want to eat, get in my car and go. And I think most people that I've traveled with agree with that.
Right. That is
how many
the
dollars
behavior
do you think are lost because people will leave Rochester, or I'm sorry, stay in Rochester, eat breakfast in Rochester, come to Niagara Falls for maybe 6-7 hours, go back home, and then probably maybe half the time eat close to home as well, so they can maybe bunk down and have a couple beers with it, and they don't want to be bothered with driving.
Right.
Would they be a fair assessment?
Yeah, and what he just described, the question you just asked, goes to the core of why I've always been an advocate for having vacation rentals. We have all this excess housing stock, right?
Okay. Now, I want to ask another question. Would you agree that a successful short-term rental is based on 2 premises? The condition of the property and the neighborhood that it's located in. Would you agree?
I would say most of the variance in performance is based on those 2 variables.
Okay. Now, here's where I have a problem with the zone. My problem is if you look between Finley Drive and Division Avenue, you have 51 homes in that area that are eligible for development. and I'm excluding anything above a 2-family and commercial property.
Okay.
When I look at 10th Street, 9th Street, 8th Street, 7th Street, 6th Street, 5th Street, 4th Street between Main and Rainbow, I don't see a lot of potential there. Now, the average sale price of a home in the city of Niagara Falls, as per Realtor.com, is $73,000.
Right.
Now, as you know, all properties are a pay me now, pay me later premise.
Right.
You can buy a $20,000 property. You're going to put at least $50,000 into it.
Sure.
Because don't forget, city inspections is going to come through and take a look at it.
Sure.
Or you can buy something, walk in, and be ready.
Right.
Now, there's also a cost associated with getting the property ready to be an STR. And those costs are things like mattresses, bed frames, headboards, dressers, end tables, lamps, rugs for the floor, dining room set, living room sets, TVs, add in your wireless router, fridge, stove, microwave, toaster, whatever else you've got in there. So now I'm just not seeing where people using the median price of $72,000 and maybe adding another $4,000 or $5,000 in to get the place ready. We're going to take that risk in neighborhoods like 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, or
certainly not under current conditions where you don't have to. You're absolutely right.
I'm sorry?
Under current conditions, you're absolutely right. They're not going to.
So, here's my question. How many dollars that we just referred to are going to be lost while we wait for someone to come up with enough money to come in and actually put money into 9th Street? Because as I'm sure you're aware, the one guy who goes in and puts the Taj Mahal in the middle of Beirut isn't going to make any money.
Right.
So the only way you're really going to accomplish this is if you have a whole bunch of buyers getting together and buying an entire block.
Yep.
Because no one's going to want to stay on 9th Street.
True. Very true. And that's what we want.
This isn't what we want because we can't afford to lose those dollars. We just estimated how many nights would be lost, plus all the ancillary dollars with it. We can't afford to do that.
We bought your conclusion based on a fact, and the fact's true. Your conclusion's not quite true. So let's go back to the amount of money we're losing. It is very true. Tourist spend is inversely proportional to the distance from their bed, meaning the closer you are to the bed, the more they spent. So yes, when we house our tourists in Erie County, they come in, they visit the park, they leave and spend, and we lost that spend. Plus, we lost the accommodation spend. Now, yes, housing them in our city improves that. We're not going. People have this false belief, though, that because we're used to the cherry picking trend that we currently have, that you won't get real investment if you zone. But no, again, I've already seen real investment in the city. I've seen 3 homes get over $500,000 put into them.
You're talking about 3rd Street, right? West
Correct.
Side?
Now, you will see a lot more of that, and you will see. So here in Niagara Falls, we're used to.
What about all the other houses on the other side of 3rd Street?
Please, let me answer. Well, if you gave that same property owner the 3 houses across the street, Meta, they would be done already too.
No. Meta doesn't own those properties. They've been owned by the city for a long time. They were forfeited a number of years ago. I'm talking about the other ones that would be further north, the ones more toward
the next
Pine
2.
Avenue. There have been 7 houses sitting there that look like they've been through warfare for the last decade.
Again, it has to do with owners willing to sell and all the other stuff. But slow the roll, please. So let's go back to, we're used to, in this city, to our market conditions. And you've got to see other places, right? I mean, I have a house in North Carolina.
I'm familiar with other places. Lots of other places.
Right. Lots of other people will be happy to come in and put $200 million, or not $200 million, but $200,000 into a house. 10 people on one block will change that entire block by block. Right. Now, if I were...
Who's going to take the first move? Who's going to make the first move? Who's going to be the first guy to plop down
I don't want to name
names,
but there's people who will.
Okay.
And I can't talk outside investment into the city without zoning, because they're all rational people who are used to how this works, and they don't want to come to a city that's not organized.
Have you looked at the STR zoning in Rochester, Buffalo, Orlando, Skinny Atlas, New York, Ithaca, New York? Have you looked at any of their zoning laws?
Specifically Ithaca, yes. Skinny Atlas, no.
I have. Or Orlando allows
Orlando,
pretty much
I've reviewed that one before. No, they're not.
Yes, absolutely they are. Take a look at the map. Take a look at all the zones.
Take a look at all the zones. I will review Orlando tomorrow and
pull up the Orlando map.
If you're on Facebook, put a comment and I'll go look at a few of those. But
Take
Buffalo hasn't.
Buffalo, you can go. Buffalo has them outside the core. You can get an SUP
That's
anywhere
fine.
from downtown Buffalo to the north
That's
towns.
fine. But it's not a destination. Orlando's a destination city for sure. Buffalo's not a destination city. Two, a lot of these cities never thought about this because they, A, weren't a destination city, and B, Airbnb didn't exist. Now the Airbnb does. Now they're starting to grapple with it because they are seeing erosion of their residents, and they're fighting this friction. So they're not caught up.
Let's go back to that friction thing. What friction things are you talking about? So what examples have you been able to cite where somebody's coming into a neighborhood with a short-term rental and disrupting the neighborhood?
Seriously?
Seriously, no.
Do you read the Buffalo News?
I'd love to hear it.
You read the Buffalo News?
Because I can cite for you a number of letters that were sent to both the planning
there's lots
boards,
of people
the
that are very
city, and
happy,
the county.
right? Because I'd much rather have a good vacation
letters.
rental next door than a bad slumlord. That's absolutely true. That doesn't mean
No, I'm
that
not
people
talking about
aren't
against
not
slumlords.
happy.
I'm talking about people who have had problems with short-term rentals in their neighborhood. There was one gentleman who spoke at the county planning board, and what he had to say was, I'm just not comfortable because I don't know who my neighbors are and there's some communication problems. Other than that, there's been nothing. Nothing.
That you're aware of.
You're using a term
That you're
friction
aware
like
of.
it's a
You're
common
using
occurrence,
one-
and it's not happening.
It
And you got
does
nothing
happen.
to back it up.
And we've got two major incidences that hit the Buffalo News. And you're also not
Okay,
looking
and
at how it
one was
affects
a
the rest of
break-in.
the market.
One was a break-in, right?
No, that would
was
be
on
the
18th
third
and Lockport
one.
Road.
That would be the third one.
Okay.
That goes
and what
back
were the
to
other ones?
December.
A party over on 24th Street
Yeah, two different parties.
in the illegal rental
Right.
because the guy was desperate for money and he took a booking from a Niagara Falls person, not realizing
Right.
that
And
he
you
probably
don't
should have
think
passed
people
him up
won't
because they
get
were from the
desperate
city?
for bookings when they're legal? You
What's
don't
that?
think people will get desperate for money when they're legal? You don't think some
No,
guests won't go around
think-
policies
I think,
and do
I think
this
Airbnb
just because it's
owners who are
legal?
responsible know
And you
not
don't
to take
think-
rentals in the wintertime from somebody coming in from 50 miles away for a single night because they realize that it's a scam.
Who are
Plus, if you look at their
responsible, right,
profile, there are telltale signs in there that'll tell you.
Right. And
this
like
is
I said,
due to
some
tourist
owners
placement
do
of a
better
party
than
bar.
others at the screening, and kudos to them. Totally encourage that. It's not worth the damage to your property to take those rentals. But there are who will get desperate and do it. There are guests who will go cheat you. And if any vacation rental owner tells me they haven't had a bad guest, they're lying.
Wrong.
And that bad
you're,
guest-
you're,
Or you've been operating
now
4
you're
months.
making broad statements that can't be supported because
Really?
I can
Am
point
I?
to you many
You're making
STL
plenty of
owners
broad
who have
statements. that-
never had a problem, and their stars are through the roof.
It's easy to
They're
have your stars through the
495,
roof.
49, 497 hosts.
I was
that
rated
have
top 10 in
never had a
America.
problem.
It's not
So you're
hard.
making another statement that's broad-based that you can't back up.
Thank you, caller. Thank you for your call.
You have bad guests. It
Right.
just happens.
Well, you know what I want to ask you? Now that we heard, I mean, I don't know. What's the, is there ramifications for what happened tonight with the planning board?
So that's a recommendation to the council.
Right.
And the council can take that or not. Typically they do. So there has to be some exceptional reasoning why they don't. I don't know. Like, they will probably write something up and explain why they recommend not doing it. Like when I was at the tourist advisory board, when we recommended something, we gave, here's why we recommend, here's why we don't. So what matters is the council's the authority. It's a council decision, and when it comes up to them, and I'm not sure when that'll be, that's really the deciding factor at that point. Then it goes all back to the drawing board.
I have another call. Caller, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing, John, Peter? How you doing, Jeff?
Hi.
Tim
Hey,
Heater.
who's on the? Who's
Who is
this?
This is Tim Heater.
Hey.
All right, Tim.
I just want to say, first off, I think people really should listen to Jeff because he's actually the forward thinker when it comes to the zoning. He's absolutely right. When you zone something commercial, it could be a strip club, it could be a restaurant, it could be anything that the city doesn't really want, as well as it could be illegal use. But if you zone this strictly for short-term rentals, you're going to limit what those could actually be used for, which goes against private property use. But in this case, I think it's something that's probably going to have to be done because what it's going to do is, number one, it's going to eliminate the corruption that could possibly come from this. Now you stop and think, if somebody comes into town and says, look, I want to buy this property. It's outside of the zone. I want to have an exception made. I want to go in and I want to go to the zoning board and I want to request an exemption so that I can put it there. Now you start getting into political favors, which is going to be a sign of corruption. That could have happened with the Grandinetti home. Okay, that was a prime example. The mayor made an exception for her because she was on council, whatever reason. But that's going to close the door. If you limit that commercial use too strictly short-term rentals, then you're not going to have an undesirable business come in there. And I'll tell you, Jeff is a very smart guy. He's obviously traveled the world, but he's a forward thinker. He's thinking of the problems that are going to come in the future that he's heading them off right now, which is part of the problem that's happened in this city. That's what opens the door for corruption. You got to think ahead. He knows what he's talking about. Just listening to him, I'm impressed. He knows what he's talking about. Obviously, he's in the business. He's experienced with this stuff. These people that are saying, you know what, we want it to be, whatever. My personal opinion, I think they should allow a short-term rental anywhere within, say, a 2-mile radius of a hotel. Because one of the complaints is it's going to ruin the neighborhood. You're going to have these people going to, listen, you got a hotel down on Buffalo Avenue over there. What is it? Used to be Sheridan, whatever, right on the river. Okay? That's not considered in the zone where they're going to allow short-term rentals. But a hotel is essentially a short-term rental. It's just not an entire house. It's a short-term rental by definition. Right. So why should they limit that zone to just certain areas down? I mean, I understand down where the tourist district is, but you've also got hotels out by the airport. Why can't you have a short-term rental? Maybe some people don't want to stay downtown because the reputation down there right now is it's a high crime area. We don't want to let the criminals target that area because you put all the tourists in one area, they're easy pickings. The criminals are going to know to target that area. We're going to have to step up the enforcement in that area as far as law enforcement. But why not, instead of isolating it down to one zone, why not making it within, like I said, like the 2-mile radius of a hotel? Because you got the same traffic going to a hotel that you're going to have to a short-term rental.
Well,
you're going to have the same people coming from out of town. I mean, that to me would make sense.
So first of all, thanks for the props. So when you talk about like so your concept of 2 miles within a hotel, I mean, you're kind of right. The only, like, I would have this current zone a little bit smaller. I mean, one thing I want to, it sounds like you might think they're zoning this strictly for, you can still have residential use in this zone. Mm-hmm. Now you can also have the short-term rental in this zone, but you won't be able to have short-term rental in other residential zones. Now,
right. My house is actually in that zone that they're putting short-term rentals that they're going to allow them, right. Which I don't mind either way. Like I said, like you said, you're going to fix up an old dilapidated house, make it useful again. We're going to get taxes off of it, everything else. I totally agree. Yeah. So but I don't think limiting it to that one area. I think that, like I said, it to me is no different than a hotel. They should make it, if they allow a hotel on Buffalo Avenue, they should allow a short-term rental down, whatever.
I don't disagree with that concept at all. And to me,
so
to me, this is a reasonable discussion you can have in the zoning. You know, is this the right border? Is this the only possible zone? Now, because I've always been focused on the economic development opportunity that this represents, if done right, for our local economy, I rather see it constant, because people are like, oh, it could take 20 years to bring that neighborhood up just doing it like this. Well, no, it's going to happen a whole lot quicker, and you're going to bring property values up in the city a whole lot faster when you concentrate it. And as you see the current real estate absorbed, new lots get a new, when's the last time a new housing permit was filed in the city? This is the sort of thing that actually,
right there behind the NAC.
This is actually the kind of thing, though, that
junior high school.
This kind of thing, though, that provokes a new build. Right here's an empty lot, and I will build a new house on it over across the bridge.
And it's going to send the message that the city is open for business to this new business. It sends the right message,
and it shows that we're organized and professional and thought things through the way like Myrtle Beach. I mean, I have Myrtle Beach sitting right here. I mean, this is just a tenth of the amount of paper that I refer to regularly as I think through this and answer a new question. But so anyways, now let's go to, I would prefer to keep it more limited now so that you get the focused concentration as you build that out and start to consume that real estate, and the market's still strong, move it out. and then move it out. I would like to see our downtown core, which is essential to redeveloping. I mean, it's totally central to an entire comprehensive plan. We have a good comprehensive plan. We should probably revisit some of the big moves made, and we need to tweak things and conditions change. But overall, it's still a good plan, and what's integral to it is developing that center core. If we don't focus this investment there, we will never develop that center core. I mean, you give me another way to develop the center core with private investment. There is no other way. Now, once you do that, now you say, okay, and the market's still strong, we could still use more vacation rentals. Well, let's look at the area around the other Sheraton up in LaSalle, and let's consider that. Let's consider some of the areas near the center city, like Home Depot area where you got some other hotels, some of those residential. So let's consider that, and let's have those debates in a calm, reasonable manner, looking at market drivers.
Right.
But the one thing it sounds like with this ordinance or the agenda item that they're trying to put through right now, it sounds like they're trying to like slam the door. This is the only place it's going to be. And what needs to be said is this is the starting point. Right. This is where we're going to start. As the market becomes elastic and we need to expand, we need to know these are going to be other areas that are considered for short-term rentals. Right. Right now, it just sounds like they're saying this is the end-all, be-all. This is the only place we're going to allow them, and that's it. And I don't think they should do that. I think they should say, this is the starting point. We're going to start here. We need to start somewhere. And like I said, the forward thinking is what really needs to be done right now, because like I said, you're going to be looking, somebody's going to get a hold of a councilman. Oh, I got a buddy that's developing and he wants to do a short-term rental. Can we get an exception? Can we get a variance for this so I can put it here? They just, it has to be done in a well thought out, organized way. And it sounds to me, like I said, that the city's just trying to say this is the only place we're going to allow them, and that's it. And you can't. There's going to, like you said, they're going to run out of houses in that area. You're not going to be able to get all the residential like mine. I'm not going to sell mine to a short-term rental.
Right. It's a zoning ordinance that obviously can be changed at any point in time. So as conditions change, you would revisit this and change it.
Well, like I said,
you'll have a new mayor.
From what I've read, it sounds like they're saying this is the only place we're going to allow them and no more. And some people are resisting that live in that area. Like I said, I'm personally not, but some people are resisting. No, we don't want to. We want to be, out here. And I understand when some people come to town. I have friends that come in, my family and stuff from Ohio, that don't want to stay downtown. They got a high crime rate. It's a well-known fact.
But again, that's
so they
basing
want to
conditions
stay
on
further away
today,
from the
Tim.
malls.
If you do this right, but that's everyone immersed in the current conditions, thinking that the current conditions will last forever. My point is, this changes the conditions sooner rather than later, and what we'll see I would predict in 5 years, we'll see a very different condition in the downtown core, and it's going to have profound effects I can't detail. But it's going to have profound positive effects throughout the rest of the city. When you don't zone it, you're not going to achieve those things.
I hope it does better. I remember when they were trying to decide where to put the new police station. They said, well, let's put it downtown. It'll run all the homeless people out from down there. We'll be able to revitalize the area. The police station didn't do nothing. You still got the vagrants running around down there.
Right. And that flies in the face of known facts, too. You can look at any other city. Their police station doesn't change crime in the area. Right, most police stations are actually in high crime neighborhoods, ironically, and they haven't decreased crime by putting the police station there. But in this case, we have other models, and we see that clustering and high density of your vacation rentals drive economics far better than the sporadic spread. Plus, you don't have the residual lower quality of life for the residents in the long term. People are looking at, even currently, well, I got bad houses, it's nice to have a nicer house, and I'd rather have him than a slumlord. That's today. But you'd much rather have a nice family living next door to you in your residential neighborhood who's sending their kids to school and riding their bikes out front than a partying bunch of tourists 3 nights a week.
Absolutely. Well, I think you need to stay involved in this because, like I said, you got the forward thinking that needs to be involved in this.
It's been 7 years and I haven't quit yet, Tim.
Well, I sure hope you don't. I mean, we've had our differences, but like I said, I listen to what you say because I know you know what you're talking about. And I think that some of these people need to sit back and actually look at the bigger picture, like you said,
Yes,
not what it is now, but what it's going to be. What is this going to do? How is this going to spur? Because, I mean, you never know. They might put another McDonald's in downtown because the one on 18th or 19th and Pine, whatever, sucks. So maybe if they have more tourists down there and they say, hey, we want a Chick-fil-A, well, let's put one down there. We'll see a market they're going to have customers, and it'll draw more businesses to come downtown.
We've been struggling to get Third Street off the ground for 2 decades now.
Yeah.
Yes.
This, I guarantee you, changes 3rd Street.
Thank you.
Well, I hope so. And like I said, I hope you stay involved. And thanks for letting me get on, guys. Have a good night.
Good to hear from you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Well, we're out of time.
Well,
We've really got. You know
We're
what?
in overtime.
We're in overtime. Oh, overtime.
I'm going to add ice cream sandwiches for the kids who work here.
I know. No, let's wrap it up then. Let's you know what, Jeff? Let's wrap it up. I mean, now we know that the planning board did what they did. September
honestly, not
2nd is
surprised
the
by the
next.
planning board.
Oh, you're not? Okay,
No.
go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
well, yeah, I'm not surprised by the planning board. Unfortunately, there's too many people there who haven't learned their job as planning board members, who don't look at the bigger picture, who allow different issues to conflate and allow personalities to enter the decision making too. I mean, did I call anyone a name tonight?
No.
Just me when you walk through the door.
But that's what I find interesting. I mean, I am strong and I will argue strenuously my opinions, and I will talk over you when you're talking and I've heard it and I want to get my point out. But I don't insult people. I don't call them names. I don't generally assign motive without you providing me your motive. And that's what I find interesting in this discussion tonight is you hear the emotion and the personal attack. And so now I will break a law I just said that I normally don't break, and that is assign motive. There are a lot of people who are invested in our current way of operating, and they see the easy opportunity of taking 60 grand, cherry picking a property, and not improving anything in our city, right? And they want to continue that model. They don't want to take on the hard project of a $20,000 house that's going to take $80,000 to improve on the 400 block of 5th Street and do that. But that is what we as a community and city want if we really want to improve and move forward, is we want those kind of investors. And when you zone, you will get them. Across the bridge, Canadians typically spend $200,000 or $300,000 on a vacation rental that takes them over a decade to recoup the underlying asset value. Here you're recouping your value in 2 years, and that's awesome. But that's not what's going to move the city forward.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you for coming in today.
Sure.
And hopefully you'll come in again when we can talk maybe about COVID-19. Right. I'd like to do that.
Look forward to having you back.
Yeah, we'll definitely have him back. Peter, thank you for sitting in for the assignment guy.
Assignment guy. Did you see his picture on Facebook today?
Yeah, I don't know what.
He posted that picture of himself with a motorcycle helmet or something.
He looked like Evel Knievel.
I know. I said you should do a movie called Queasy Rider.
Well, let me thank the two Virgos. They were also here tonight, and they have a great, fun podcast that you can find on the Two Virgos group, and that's Jennifer Blythe Nichols and Beck Gesh. They're a lot of fun Tuesday at 6 o'clock.
Absolutely.
One other thing, I want to thank the guys, the kids, the
yo-yos.
Yeah, I want to thank them for being here, working overtime, and thank Robin for always sending out my stuff. Peter, of course, Jeff, I thank you for being here. One thing I do want to remind you of is I usually just say to the show, and I just want to do it again. If you're a sexual abuse survivor, don't hesitate to call the YWCA here in Niagara County. They're outstanding, incredible people there that will do counseling with you over the phone if you need, whatever you need. And it's 716-278-9662. They're really good. And if you're a survivor, please get a hold of them if you ever need help. And also you can call RAIN, and that's with 2 N's at the end, 1-800-656-4673. The last number I want to give out is for mental health issues. If you're contemplating suicide, you're depressed, anything like that, it's 1-800-662-HELP, 1-800-662-4357. and everything is confidential, and you're never alone, so don't ever think you are if you're having a tough time. And next week, Wednesday, I found a Biden supporter, and I found a Democrat who was willing to come on. Her name is Kathleen Masella-Lloyd, and she'll be here next week, and we're going to talk about why she's a Democrat, what do Democrats stand for, and why should Joe Biden be president. So that's it, guys. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
I want to be in the studio audience for Kathleen Masella-Lloyd. Questions for me?